Hello and welcome to Searching for Pixels. My guest today joined YouTube in May 2016. His YouTube channel has 3.8 million views and he has 44,000 subscribers. It is none other than Indigo Gaming. How are you, sir?
Very good. How about you?
I'm very good. So, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, like you just said, I started, it was basically just one night. I was getting off work and I'm like, I want to do a YouTube channel. I was talking to a friend and he kind of wanted to do one too. And I literally just put up some artwork, whatever I had on hand, like a stock photo of like, it was a mock Halo, photo. And that night I just sat down, I figured out how to use NVIDIA Capture. It was called Shadowplay at the time. And I just recorded a game of I found the nearest microphone. It was like a $10 microphone, and I hit record and I started playing Enter the Gungeon, I think it was.
Okay.
And weirdly enough, that's still my best game of Enter the Gungeon that one night, and it was terrible. I recorded in 60 frames per second, but I ended up rendering it in 30 frames. My audio for my game was way too loud. It was truly awful. It was like the worst Let's Play you can ever play. You can ever watch. And I did a couple other videos after that. I switched microphones. I got a slightly better microphone. It was also bad. Did some Overwatch content. I started to edit my stuff a little bit more, and then I right around the time of Doom 2016's release, I kind of, I really wanted to do a Doom retrospective, and my concept for what I wanted to do was much better than my current talent.
Okay.
And so it took way longer than I thought. It took me like weeks and weeks and weeks to put that together. It was only 10 minutes, but it was a huge project for the time. And, that got a few hundred views, but I was still like maybe like 20 or 30 subscribers at the time. And I was doing little videos here and there. I did like a couple more Let's Plays and some other things. I was kind of varying up my content because I didn't, at the time, I wasn't doing scripted videos each time. But I was just about to kind of like, I lost a couple subs and I was like, oh, is this really my peak? So I was about to quit. And then I decided I want to do a 3-part, like a half an hour long, which sounded crazy, ridiculously ambitious at the time, a half an hour long retrospective on Looking Glass Studios. And that's really where I kind of found the kind of content I wanted to do. And I released it. I was going to do one whole big video and ended up becoming too long, so I cut it up into 3 parts and I edited them separately. And I got the attention from some of the actual I think I was retweeted by the guys who now own like the System Shock, the publishers. What was it, Night Dive Studios? I was retweeted by Other Side Entertainment, which was awesome because there's actual Paul Neurath and Warren Spector and stuff are there now. So I was actually getting a little bit of attention, at least from the social media account of the actual creators. So I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. That actually helped me get a little bit of things, and Reddit was starting to post my stuff. So yeah, it was starting to come together. And those 3 videos took me from like 20 subs to like 200 or something. So I actually started to get a fairly regular audience. And then I started various other series, but really when I hit my stride, I think, was when I did a comparison to Diablo.
Diablo 2 to Diablo 3.
Yeah. That's the first video that broke 100,000 views. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I didn't even really think those numbers were really possible at the time, but that's when it actually kind of became real that maybe I could actually do this as like a sort of part-time job, hobby, get some major attention. And so, and I was able to replicate that kind of viewership a few times, not quite as much as that one right away, but I did like I was shocked. I did a Daggerfall video, which is a 2-year-old game, and that got like 30,000 views. And that was still back in 2016. And I was able to like pretty much get a pretty good audience for games I was just like, I kind of pulled out of my hat. Next year I did a video on, I just decided to cover Hellgate London, and it just happened to blow up for some reason. It's the weirdest thing. I don't think you can really do that so much anymore with YouTube, but I remember after I did the Hellgate video, on a whim again, I was looking at my stats and I was like, it was like, 20 10 views an hour, 20 views an hour, whatever. It's kind of gone its course. And I was just watching a movie on one screen, and all of a sudden I saw 10,000 views an hour, just out of the loop. Yeah, an hour for like,
wow,
just flat, like one after the other. And I was like, what, voodoo magic did I just do?
Yeah.
But no, it was great. And then I started long story short, I kind of found my thing. And, I've been a gamer for, probably 28 years, or whatever, since NES and stuff like that. I know it's not as big over in the UK, but, Nintendo 60, Super Nintendo, PlayStation, things like that. It wasn't so much a Sega guy, but, I kind of grew up with consoles and kind of switched to computers and went back to consoles. So I kind of have a pretty long range of gaming history. So I kind of gravitate toward telling interesting stories or sharing interesting games or obscure games from the past, and kind of putting them into context with present time games. So it's a long-winded answer, but that's roughly where the channel evolved to, is covering retrospectives and comparing them to new games, pretty much.
Yeah, I do like the long-winded answers. You learn a lot more with those long-winded answers. They're very good. With your background, there were two things that really impressed me about the videos that you made. One is the writing, that they're always very, very well written. And the other is definitely the use of After Effects. Well, I say After Effects, whatever program you use. The animation style that you use is very, very high quality. Do you have a background in those things, or was that something you picked up as you progressed through making YouTube videos?
I don't have a professional background in video. I'm a self-taught graphic designer, though. That's the thing that puts money on the table right now. I've been doing professional graphic design since 2005, when I worked at a pretty big nonprofit, and I started, went into web design and freelance and all that kind of stuff. I've worked at a few companies now, but yeah. So graphic design, which is if you know much about graphic design, you'll realize that there's tons and tons of subfields of that. There's print designers, there's logo designers, there's illustrators, there's web developers, which is a completely different thing. There's some people who know how to do fantastic brochures but don't know the first thing about websites, and stuff like that. And video is a whole other field which most people don't, most graphic designers proper don't really know about. I dabbled in a Sony movie studio, which is actually what I started out with Sony movie studio when I started my channel. But as I started kind of wanting to up my presentation, I constantly saw how limited I was, and I wanted to kind of make it a bit more. I recognized early on that I don't have a ridiculously, effusive and entertaining personality. So what I kind of weighed my strengths, and I'm like, I'm a designer, so I think my presentation is my strongest suit. So I really I invested in better software. I got Sony Vegas. I have used Premiere and After Effects. I do use After Effects occasionally, usually for a particular sequence. It just, my workflow, if I get too much in After Effects, it can be 5 hours spent on 20 seconds of footage, which based on the length of my videos, it can get really, really weighty.
Yep.
But I used a few different programs for this, that, and the other. But yeah, I upgraded to Vegas. I got more and more, tools. I got a better camera. I got, switch microphones. I think I've used 5 different microphones since I started my channel.
Yeah.
Sound processing stuff, preamps. I'm on my second preamp, lights, things like that. So I've put a lot of money back into my channel for sure. But I appreciate that comment about my editing. Sometimes I'll literally, I think one of my Diablo videos, I did this ridiculous chart that's flowing through, and I made mock skill trees and things like that, and that got ridiculous. I think 1 minute of that video took me probably 10-20 hours at its densest point. So I think that's kind of my strong suit. A funny anecdote, actually. After I finished my fairly bad Doom retrospective that I poured my heart and soul in, but I just didn't really have much experience at that point. I was like, this is awesome. And I got a couple hundred views. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I searched Doom retrospective. And I don't know if you know the channel, but I immediately saw Xbox Ahoy's Doom retrospective.
Oh
And
yeah, he put doesn't Xbox Ahoy. Does he do the videos about the guns? He does like
yeah,
the M60 or whatever, and
yeah,
like super animated.
he has a storybook teller's voice and like
Yeah.
amazing illustrative and editing skills. And so I saw my like little tiny newbie video compared to his, and I'm like, I almost quit right there. I was like, okay, I'm done. I can't do that. But I decided eventually to kind of look at that as an inspiration and say, hey, I'm not to mimic his style because he's got his own style. You can't really mimic that. But
Yeah.
I was trying to strive for comparable quality.
Yeah.
And so that kind of kept me going. I think it's always useful when you're starting out with any field, really, to not be enclosed and kind of like just don't consume your own work so much. Look at what's out there. Look at what you could achieve, because you'll be amazed sometimes. You'll think you're like on top of your game, and then you'll realize you have so much more to learn. So
Yeah. And so that's your background in the animation side of things. Do you also have any personal background to the writing side of your videos?
no, I'm pretty much self-taught. I wasn't necessarily traditionally educated. I did a couple years of grade school, and then I was homeschooled for a few years, but I would always skip it.
Yep.
So I probably learned the most prepping for a diploma equivalent and in the internet. So, and I have this one problem that's actually coming more and more common, where you've read more than you've like learned from speech. So you like know all these great words, but you don't know how to say them.
Okay, right.
But yeah. So I don't know. My earlier stuff was kind of, I couldn't really figure out the tone I was going for. Like my Diablo video, I have a couple of jokes that kind of fall flat a little bit. And there's some great amazing comic game videographers, I guess we'd call them. I just didn't really see my talent as that. I mean, I can write some kind of funny things, and I do sprinkle little puns and little jabs throughout my videos, but nothing too on the nose. But no, I pretty much self-taught. I usually start out with like a rough idea of what I wanted to do, and then I kind of say, okay, what's the end goal? But I never assume that I know what the end message will be, because that, I think you kind of narrow yourself into a box at that point. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a video about why I hate this game. Like that's kind of, instead of saying like, okay, I'm gonna make a video like why this game's terrible, I'm gonna say why do I not like this game. Like I try to analyze what my feelings are, and why this game, I can tell it's good, but for some reason I do not like it. I'm trying to figure out what the little in between things described to somebody who's never played it, why I don't like it, and not just say it sucks, or the graphics aren't good, but like, do I feel immersed? Do I, when I hear sounds, does it sound like, blips and bloops, or do I actually feel like bones crackling, or, do I feel like when I gather loot, am I gathering something with a lot of value, or is it just so common that it seems kind of, useless at that point? Like I try to put, instead of just saying this is bad and, you should feel bad, I say like, this is why I feel or lay out. I usually, it's one thing I kind of do, and it's become such a trend that I kind of do it every time. I always set up the video with like a kind of punchy one-liner at the beginning, like kind of I'm trying to think of a good one on one of my videos, but I think on my Chrono Trigger versus this remake video, I did like I'm paraphrasing, but there's nothing quite as frustrating as a almost brilliant game or something like that. Like it just kind of set the premise. Yeah. And then I kind of move on from there, and I usually do like a lengthy, like 1 to 3 minute intro, setting up the premise for it, and then I break it down to like, gameplay and mechanics and, atmosphere and stuff like that. And one of my struggles has been finding the right medium between pure objectivity and like opinion, because you can get anybody's opinion really easily on these kind of things, but backing your opinion up with some factual basis or some reasoning and making those distinct enough, I think it is hard because people want to have some sort of flavor in their videos, some sort of opinion, some sort of, bias without being too obvious about the bias. But, I think it's better when you actually can add reason and also acknowledge your own biases. So yeah, that's roughly what I would start with.
I think someone who does that particularly well is Jeff Gerstmann from Giant Bomb. A lot of people who watch his videos kind of know his biases, and they can use that while being informed of his opinions to make their own opinions. So it's like, oh, Jeff would think this, so they get an idea of what they're striving for. Because when I was watching your videos, it reminded me, the way I thought about it, it was kind of a mix of, say, Matthew Matosis. Do you watch Matthew Matosis?
Yeah, I watch some of his stuff. He's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like kind of like a blend of that with a blend of Captain Christian or something. So you got this high quality animation, high quality video editing and animation, along with this really good writing. So that's the way that I say placed your placed your channel, but that's how I thought about it. So it's really cool. Say that you want to make a video.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide on what topic you're going to cover? So would you have, say, a list? Because I know some people have a list of topics, like I'd like to, say, look at Diablo, or, look at Daggerfall or something like that, and they kind of work their way down, or is it as it strikes you, as inspiration strikes?
It's kind of evolved. I know that, like, for example, Mandalore, I'm sure he probably explained his process. Like, I think he has a gigantic... I've seen it. He's got a gigantic Google Doc.
Over almost 1,000 games. I did an interview with him before, and he shared it, and it's like almost it's like 700 games or something nuts.
He's awesome. We get compared a lot, and he's actually hopped into my live streams a couple times. We bantered. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. Really awesome, really humble. It was really, I would mark down ideas when I had them, but really it used to be like my first year and a half was probably just really flippant. Like one of my most successful videos as far as viewership was my Hellgate video. And that was literally, I thought, oh man, I haven't played Hellgate for a while. I remember that game. And I had just started a series called Not Forgotten, which I was going to be my obscure game category. And Hellgate wasn't necessarily an obscure game, but it became quickly obscure.
Yeah.
People kind of forgot about it, especially when it got outshone like a year later by Borderlands, which it was the same, shooter meets Diablo concept, but it did it a lot more in a lot more popular fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So I banged that together in like two weeks or something like that, 2.5 weeks, and that was just a flippant thing. But now I have a bit more organized, but it does kind of. I'm heavily swayed toward what kind of grabs me at the time. I used to kind of try to jump onto trending things. I've successfully done that like a couple times, where like I did a video about Diablo right around its 20th anniversary.
Yep.
But I quickly realized as my videos got longer and my production values increased and time became more and more of an issue, that it just became too difficult to actually knock something out within any predictable time frame. Like sometimes I'd set out to do a video and it ended up being twice as long. So I do have a list at probably about 50 or so concepts, anything ranging from like a topical idea, like I've been planning for a while to do a series based on like I cover one like obscure game mechanic, like fire systems or something like that in games. Right. Kind of akin almost to what's his name? The Gamer's Toolkit, that kind of guy. He kind of does like sometimes like systems-based things or puzzle-based things. But another times it's just games. Like I write down a game like someday I want to cover Star Control 2. Like I have that on my list. Or sometimes they're a bit more like a specific story in game development history or a specific studio, for example, like Westwood Studios or whatever like that. So. It really does kind of depend on what is inspiring to me at the time. Like my current topic, I've been wanting to cover for probably a year or two, but it's been kind of daunting. and I do have a few scripts on the back burner that I come back to a couple times. Sometimes I delay them because of like, oh, I'd really be benefited by having this game in there, and I know that game's coming out later this year, so I'll hold on that or whatnot, or it's just it's just too daunting or whatever. But it's the common thing recently is I start out like for example, I just a couple months ago I was like, wow, I just did a 78-minute video on the Elder Scrolls series that took me like
Yeah.
2.5 months.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick video, and I started my quick video, which ended up becoming a 2-hour interview with a French developer across the world.
Yeah.
That I edited and like a 25, like the longest ever not forgotten episode. So I have a terrible time of like keeping something within the scope that I intend, but it is pretty cool. I think that's one of my better works actually, because I exposed a game that was truly obscure, but and I managed to talk to the creator of one of my favorite games. So I mean, it's a win-win really. So.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of, especially recently, you've done quite a few interviews, particularly with game designers. I think, did you do one for Daggerfall? There was an interview with someone from, was it Daggerfall?
Yeah, I've interviewed 2 people who are key developers for the Elder Scrolls series. He's often called the father of the Elder Scrolls, Julian. Well, he's gone by like 4 names, but he's currently going by Julian Jensen.
Yep.
He was the project. They had different names back then, different titles, but essentially be a director. He'd be called the director now.
Okay.
But he was the project lead for Elder Scrolls Arena, Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, and Elder Scrolls Battlespire, which Battlespire was a spin-off, but he was the head of the first 2 numbered titles in the Elder Scrolls series. And I also interviewed Ted Peterson, who was more of a designer-writer for those titles, plus Morrowind and Oblivion. So he was more of the lore aspect and game design and systems, whereas Julian was more of the programming, mechanics, core concept. So
Okay. And how have you been finding doing interviews and branching into that side of content? Has it been interesting for you?
Yeah, it is really cool. I kind of just accidentally fell into it because I was looking, in between. But I was doing a 3-part series of videos at the time, and I was just looking into like why has no one ever talked to Julian LeFay, who now is known by Julian Jensen, and the guy is like super obscure. Like nobody ever talked to him really. Like I can't find a written interview, I can't find a voice interview, a video. Like I use Google Foo and like quote his name, and I can't find a thing about him. Like I find out he did some music and stuff like that for the Amiga, but that's about it. And I'm like, this guy's got to be out there. And so, and he was the backbone to one of my favorite games, which is the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, and there's not really been a game quite like it since. So I was like, I kind of made it my mission. And weirdly enough, I mean, I'm sure you're probably learning that as well now that you're interviewing people.
Yep.
Using a little bit of Google Foo and a little bit of diplomatic persuasion, you can usually get a hold of anybody. Fairly without too much effort. But I mean, he was obviously busy. I think he was working in 2 different cities at the time, but I tracked him down. I found a forum post that showed that he actually used a different name. That's how I tracked him down. I found the name he was currently using, his job title, and an approximate location, and I was able to track him down. And
approximate location.
Yeah. I tried contacting him through his work, it didn't work. Then I tried contacting him through a social media site, and he eventually answered, and took a few weeks to get it to happen, but I was ridiculously nervous. I'd never interviewed anybody before, but yeah, I made a little bit of piece of history. I think I'm the only person to have an interview with him, and he's kind of I wouldn't say like a shut-in or like a hermit. He's just super busy. He's a programmer. He gets into the zone, and he does a lot of work, and he still does 9 to 5 just like any of us. So I mean, he's working hard and whatever, but I think he really shone a lot of light to some lesser known part of history. And Elder Scrolls is a multi-billion-dollar franchise now, but I mean, you don't really talk to the guys who created it very much, so I thought that was pretty cool.
You still managed to nab him for 3 hours, I think. So
yeah, for sure.
And so you're mostly known for you're doing the interviews now. You're doing your analysis of video games, looking back and talking about these topics. But you also do live streaming, if I'm not mistaken, quite regularly as well.
Yeah, I started live streaming actually in 2016. I thought it was cool. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to pull it off because I kind of recognize that I don't have like I don't have the weird colored hair. I don't have weird personality and like jokes, and I actually have had a speech impediment when I was growing up. So great job pick, right? But it's kind of I had a stutter. I can't even say it now. A stutter, but it's weird. I've talked to other people too, where you end up. It's almost it's a blessing and a curse. You to overcome the inability to finish a sentence. You end up very very carefully forming your words.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're reciting a speech when you're just talking regularly, and you never quite get rid of it. You just kind of hide it really well. So yeah, you should see my recording takes. It's like, with like cuts everywhere, but
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. It's terrible. My least favorite part of the process is the recording / sound editing. But I forgot where I was going with that. But live streaming, yeah, I didn't really think I'd be able to pull it off, but I did a live stream. I think my first game was one of my favorite games, Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation. Amazing game. Got immediately flagged by Konami because Konami's Konami. But I did a more like my first few were like kind of. I did one for Halloween. I did one for like my some subscriber count thing. I would do them kind of like as a special bonus, but eventually I kind of got into doing them weekly.
Yeah.
But I run into issues where like it's kind of flooding my channel with live stream archives, and I put so much work into setting them up, the camera, the layout, and green screen, which I did green screen from day one. So it was a lot of work to set all those up. So I didn't really want to just like let them float out into the ether. So I always kept a record. But long story short, I'd start getting like diminishing returns and people complain about not being able to find my scripted videos. So I decided to create a second channel, and that's where I've moved all my archives, and I just now started moving my live streamings events proper to that second channel. So now I have my main channel, which is going to be nothing but scripted videos, and my secondary channel, which is going to be nothing but live streams. So kind of made the split. It'll be a little bit to build up that audience, because I don't get 45 million, or I wish 45,000 subscribers looking at that. But yeah, I just kind of separate that. A few different YouTubers have done that too, because it's just, some people want your live stuff, some people want your, well thought out stuff. So,
Is there one? Do you prefer one to the other from your experience, or they come with their different challenges and benefits?
Once you have a good live streaming setup, it's ridiculously easy. I mean, it's playing a game with friends, basically. Like, you want to be entertaining, you want to be energetic, and sometimes you don't really feel up to it. But I mean, I can do a live stream in like 4 hours. But my scripted videos take like 40 to, at least 40 hours, if not, 100 or 200 hours, depending on the length of it. So, I mean, my live streams don't really reach a huge audience. I think I peaked at like 160 concurrent or something like that, which is awesome. It's great. But obviously, my Fallout video, for example, just passed 1 million viewers. So that's a completely different level of reach, and it comes with some bad things too. I mean, I've noticed that the sweet spot, if you want like nice things for people to say nice things about you, the sweet spot is less than 10,000 views.
Okay.
For some reason, if you get more than 10,000 views, you get all the gremlins and the trolls and the dragons of YouTube to descend upon you and say you wouldn't believe all the things. I'm sure any other big YouTuber will say the same thing. Like the things that they'll say, they'll pick apart your voice, your pronunciations, your writing, how all the things you didn't mention. Why your opinion sucks and why theirs is better. anything in the book, but it's all good feedback, and I think I've learned things and gotten better at writing and analyzing things because of some of those. Some of them are truly awful, but if one guy says something that is completely untrue and ridiculous, you're like, okay, you dismiss it. But if enough people say something that kind of has a grain of truth in it, you start to kind of like say, they might have a point.
Yeah.
So I think I've learned from that. But yeah, I to answer your question, I really enjoy live stream. It kind of helps me talk to my audience directly, because when I'm doing a scripted video, I'm talking into a little microphone. I'm reading scripted lines. I'm spending hours and hours and hours editing, but I don't really hear back from real people so much. I just kind of get comments, and the thing with comments is people are basically just shouting at a wall. They don't even know if anybody will actually read them. They just want to shout their opinion at the wall. But with live streams, like, people actually come into my live stream and say, like, your video's awesome. I watched it 5 times. It's great. Or it's like, oh, I really like this game. Or you can like actually answer questions on the fly. So it kind of helps me. So I'm not just like pouring energy, outward. It kind of helps me like get energy back inward a little bit. Like it kind of helps me kind of develop more of a connection to my audience, I think. So I do really enjoy it. I don't really get I don't do it enough, and I don't get enough viewership to really do that full time. But I think I'm probably I'm not that like pro gamer or that funny or whatever. So I'd probably be more suited to do what I do primarily. But I do like being able to talk to my audience directly. It is fun.
Have you ever? You're talking about receiving comments from particular people. Have you ever received a comment on a video that made you rethink or maybe change your opinion on something you've discussed in one of your videos? So say you did I don't know, for example, your video on your 20th anniversary video on Fallout. So Fallout isn't Fallout anymore. Has anybody ever made a point or a suggestion that you thought, oh, okay, I've never thought about it that way?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was corrected on a couple points. And some of the points one guy came by and corrected a point, and I'm like, yeah, that was kind of rude. But, I actually went back and we're now friends. He's a Colonel RPG. If you ever watch him, he's pretty cool. He's
okay.
I think he's Brazilian or something like that. But yeah, I've seen a couple points like that. Particularly I think that's probably been that one in my Diablo video, I think has been my most, I think I've grown the most from those videos, just from like a writing standpoint, and like, maybe I should rethink things. Like it's kind of difficult, because if I were to go back and do my Fallout video again, there would be some changes. I pretty much stand by like 90%, 95% of what I said, but there were some things I was like, that's kind of a cheap shot, or, that's maybe I should have been a bit more descriptive. I could have dug into it more, but I also should have praised it for the advances it did have. Like it did kind of sound like I kind of took some pretty heavy slugs at a game, and, and when you're in the middle of a really long project, sometimes you just kind of like, I just got to get it done, but when you step back from it, especially after a year of retrospect, you can kind of see things better. But some comments about that, like, particularly about, I wasn't really too critical of Fallout New Vegas, but a couple of things I said in that, and I think I were kind of just not really that important, or kind of cheap shots. And I actually after that video did well, I started live streaming again, and that's when I started like getting pretty big numbers. I did a 3-part series where I took Fallout New Vegas and I'd mod it to try to make my ideal game, basically.
Yeah.
And I had all these like, some graphics mods, some, sound mods, some, I added a mod that let me do like an overworld with fast travel and random encounters, kind of like the old games, different things. And every based on the feedback and how I liked it, I'd add more mods the next week or whatever. And I after playing that again in that fashion, I think I had a much higher opinion of New Vegas in particular. So if I were to go back and rewrite that video, I would have definitely done my treatment on that a bit more positively, I think.
Okay. And I watched one of your videos, The Splendor of the Mundane, as when you're talking about the immersion being increased in the world, when you're talking to characters in the world and doing basic everyday things in a way. And you talked about the positive side of that. At what point do you think that interacting in those mundane experiences, for example, say Shenmue or Deadly Premonition, games you talked about, at what point does that become detrimental to the game? Does it become immersion breaking in a way?
Immersion breaking. I mean, I guess it's kind of the point of the game. Like we've kind of almost seen like a not necessarily a resurgence, but like an emergence actually of purposefully mundane games. Like I mentioned, I think Papers, Please, which is like a deliberately mundane game, which I thought was actually brilliant. And the designer Lucas Pope actually released a new game. I'm actually wanting to try out sometime. You play an insurance agent. Which sounds like the worst idea ever, but it's right. Interesting. Basically, the premise is like a period piece where this boat comes in that had been lost for years, and all the crew are dead. And you're basically an insurance agent / detective, and you have to figure out how all this happened and who's responsible and who needs to be paid out what, and if anybody's at fault, whatever. And you do all this retroactively, and it takes like a very interesting situation, kind of like Papers, Please was a very kind of Soviet, kind of fake Soviet Russia, totalitarian government meets paperwork. Kind of a similar concept to that. It's obviously got a style, but I for a deliberately mundane game, I think the mundanity in like Papers, Please makes it kind of brilliant because it puts like totalitarian evil into the context of a 9-to-5 job, which I think is a brilliant idea. With Shenmue, your overarching goal is to find the murder of your father, which happens in the first 5 minutes. And like we have kung fu and things like that. It might be karate, I'm not sure, but yeah. So in that, it's a bit more high adventure, a bit more fantastic, I guess. So the idea that you say doing a lot of paperwork in that game it'd probably detract from the experience because it is kind of set a high, like it introduces itself in a more high fantasy tone or high adventure tone. So introducing too much, I think, would be detrimental. But the way that Shenmue does it, obviously it's a bit clunky. It's a bit old. It's almost 20 years old at this point. But like the having to, you're doing like, almost like a personal detective work. You having to look at your scribbled notes and make sure you meet this guy at this bar at 8 p.m. That kind of makes it turns your, what would normally just be an objective on the side of your screen in a modern game into its own thing. Like, ooh, I better make sure I'm there at that point in time. What can I do in the meantime? Should I play at the arcade? Should I grab a drink? Maybe there's some other people. Fu. Yeah, train on some kung fu. Should I, talk to the noodle guy? Maybe he has some, things like that. Like, and all of a sudden you get really immersed in the world because everybody's been there. Like, I've got a job interview at 4, but I've got 2 hours to kill. That sounds really boring, but you start to. I mean, you're still pushing the buttons. You're still looking at a TV screen, but you're kind of connecting to the world in a way that is whacking a sword against a goblin. It doesn't really quite fulfill, and I think that was the gist of it. I really like that video. Hopefully I got that across pretty clearly. But yeah, it's the connection to the world, I think, is what the mundanity kind of, because we don't all know kung fu. We haven't all had our fathers murdered in a dojo. But we have, had to dial a phone number up in a phone book, or from a phone book. We had to meet somebody at a place. We had to go to, ask questions or whatever. So I think it's a lot like you try to find a baseline that we can connect, and the mundanity is that baseline, and then you can add the kind of fantastic elements to that. But without that baseline, you don't really connect with the character.
Yeah, because watching the video, the one thing that when I was looking, Shenmue is one of my favorite games. It's up there. I mean, I know it's nowadays it isn't the greatest, but with my nostalgic ogrons, is one of my favorite games. But I just remember the amount of time that you have to put into the forklift scene and the carrying the crates. At some point, maybe that mundaneness becomes a bit too much. Like they take it slightly too far. Although I still remember it's very iconic. I think finding that balance, like you said, between that mundane and then the adventure on the top, getting that balance is just right. That makes it really, really good. With Persona 5 as well, you talked about Persona 5. Love that game.
Yeah, great game. I played a little bit of it. My fiance just beat it a few months ago all the way through, and I watched her play it, and I'm like, this is such a immaculately designed game. Like every single screen has been like, as a graphic designer, I'm like, oh, you know,
it's
like
so good, isn't it?
Every single screen, like you go to a pharmacist and like they've got 4 or 5 different pharmacist themed menus, and I'm like, oh my god, how much time did they spend on this? But it just, it's so fun, you know, it's so stylized. It has so much character and personality in every single moment. It's a great game.
Yeah, the wallpaper on my phone is Morgana from the game, and I've got a keychain with Morgana, so I'm a little bit obsessed with Persona 5, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, was it Gersman or somebody who did a video, and he talked about how horrible the I might have been Jeff Gersman, I'm not sure, I might be mixing it up, but somebody like that in that capacity did a video about how terrible forklifts and everything in Shenmue is an awful game. And I'm like, I get what he's saying, but you're playing and yeah, maybe it was too much. I think it'd probably been better if it was more of an optional thing that you didn't have to do for, you know, hours. But I think the job's kind of, you know, it's not going to be for everybody, but I think it kind of helps. But yeah, maybe they went a little bit too far. But I think that the game really shines, I think, in its NPC schedules, and you know, and like it was crazy. When recording, I saw, like, you know, everybody opening up their shops at different times of day in their opening hours. But what blew my mind was that I think it was the burger guy or whatever in the first area. I was streaming Shenmue a couple weeks after I did that video, and I was just walking around. I was kind of going back home because it was at night and it was past my curfew or whatever. But I walked by the burger guy, and he shuts down his shop, leaves, and on his way to his actual home, he has an actual home in an apartment building and a specific door. On his way home, he goes into and zones into the supermarket, the Quickie Mart, buys some stuff, then comes out, and he's carrying his groceries on his way to his house. Like, that's insane for a 1990 game. I mean, it was.
I had no idea they did that.
Yeah, apparently there's also, like, you can actually. One of my commenters was saying that you can actually find out that some of the people are like dating each other because they go to the same rooms, and it's like got all this weird context stuff that you wouldn't even know unless you paid attention. But it does it tricks you into thinking it's a real world, which I love things that do that. So
yeah, especially when you said it's been almost 20 years now that game's been released. God, it's crazy. Absolutely fantastic. So my next question for you is, looking back on all these videos you've done, and earlier today, I think it was earlier today, about 4 or 5 hours ago, you tweeted that you have 10 videos that have reached 100,000 views, and your Fallout video has just reached 1 million views. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, the Fallout video just today passed 1 million. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And so looking back on that, and looking back on the videos you've made, is there a video which you're particularly proud of? Say for maybe for the work that you put into it, or for the content that you covered? Is there one that really strikes out at you that you think, wow, I'm proud about that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's some definite videos I'm trying to think of. I kind of clear my clear my brain after I do a video sometimes, so I sometimes I even forget that I've covered things. But off of the top of my head, without question, the most work I put into a single video was my Elder Scrolls retrospective. That was a colossal task. It was a feature-length video. I think that one was really probably, if I had to point anybody to like one video that I think I did pretty well, I'd point them to that one. I think I was more mature and less biased, and more explained my points better in that than I did in my Fallout video, because I had a year of experience and things like that. Otherwise, I think I really like the kind of neat and cleanliness of my Troika series. I think that I'm still kind of sad that didn't actually do as well as I thought it would. I mean, it's gotten some decent views, but I put a ton of work into that series, and particularly I think that the way my voiceover timing and the beautiful soundtrack of Arcanum kind of dances around what I say. Like I'm still impressed at how well it goes in my video. I think the sound design and the way the music kind of like, even like I didn't even edit it that the music that much, but somehow some of the tracks actually follow my, like, if I'm talking about something good, it's kind of like it kind of goes up a little bit. If I'm talking about something bad, it actually kind of dips down a little bit. Some of that was literally accidental, but it just dances around my voiceover at points, and I'm like, damn, that's like, I'm actually starting to kind of feel like a little bit more melancholy in this passage because the music and stuff like that. So I think that was a really, really good one. You know, the whole series. I moved, or I think I was moving, or no, I think a hurricane hit during my second video on my Trica, so that one was very rushed, so that one wasn't as good, I think. But the Arcanum one and my my Vampire one, I think literally I've gotten like at least 4 or 5 people comment that I made them cry at the end of my my Vampire video.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Well, I think I know the part. It's toward the end where I'm talking about how the game was rushed out and there was all these technical issues and stuff like that. But then after I said all the like the business stuff, I get into how, you know, Troika made living, breathing worlds, and I started going in that passage. And I think that like that I have this beautiful piece by, I think, Chris Zabriskie, I think his name is. He does free, royalty-free stuff. I literally, it was a complete accident. I was searching for free music through YouTube, and I found I was like, it's not gonna have anything, but I'm just gonna search Vampire, and there was this song called, I think, Vampire Detective or something like that. Okay. And I was like, that's weird. It could be something completely wrong, but I listened to it. I'm like, this is my outro song, and so that. It was like a very slow piano piece that kind of built up, and there was like some layers of strings and synth in there, and that I just kind of I even amped it up a little bit more than I should have. Like I made the music a bit louder than I probably should have, just for my voiceover to be legible. But I think that combination of like my kind of melancholy voiceover combined with that amazing piece by Chris Zabriskie, it just kind of, like, I actually kind of get a little bit emotional listening to that part. I think that part was probably my I didn't try to be manipulative in a way, but I just like my kind of I kind of felt sad that company had so much potential, just like did not work out, and their works have show so much inspiration and promise, but it just didn't happen. It didn't reach that audience. It didn't reach success. I think it all kind of just came together, and it was a really beautiful moment. I think particularly the Arcanum and the Vampire. I think those are some of my better works. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back and watch the Vampire one and see if I cry.
I spoiled it now. You won't. You know, it's one of those things like, you know, oh, don't watch blah movie, you'll cry, and you'll never cry now. But, I do recommend that. It's a 3-part series. I think it's about 50 minutes the whole thing, but it goes over. I really like the format of that too, because instead of doing one big video about the company, I figured I could do a retrospective of the company and individual reviews, because they only did 3 games. So it's a 3-part series, but it's also 3 individual reviews. So it's kind of like, I figured out how to do 2 formats at once. So I thought it was kind of cool. So, but yeah, I recommend the series. It's pretty good.
Very nice. And what are you playing now in your spare time? Because looking back at the videos you make, most of them are about role-playing games or that similar style. Are you playing a particular role-playing game at the moment, or what's on your list?
The weird thing is, pretty much what I cover in my videos is exact opposite of what I do with my off time, because like I don't know, like I love my RPGs are my favorite games, but like I made a rule. Like I was playing Overwatch early in my YouTube channel and covering it at the same time, and I got really burnt out. I'd always like, maybe while I'm playing it for fun, I was like, maybe I should be recording this in case I need it for footage later. And that kind of, I was no longer enjoying the game. So I kind of almost draw a line in the sand of like, is this a game I'm playing for fun, or is this a game I'm covering? And I do play the games I've covered for fun, but I kind of almost play RPGs and things like that. The only other time I can actually get away with that is like on my live streams. Really, like I'm so busy with everything else that for my video recording and my live streams, I pretty much play my RPGs, and for fun, I play brain dead shooters and other stuff mostly. But I do experiment around in different games. Like sometimes I'll be like, I'm wondering if this is a good game, so I'll play it for a couple hours, and if it doesn't click, it doesn't click. But yeah, weirdly enough, pretty much whatever I cover on my channel, I play pretty much the complete opposite for fun, because it kind of helps me separate the fun and the work, I guess. But yeah, I mean, none of the games I cover on my channel I don't like. I like all the games I praise in my channel. I just I think the separation kind of keeps me from going crazy a little bit.
And what do you do outside of video games as a personal interest? Because I've learned that Mandalore used to train horses. I know that 8-Bit Brody likes to buy stuff on Craigslist and fix it and sell it, and he's interested in like supercars and stuff. Do you have a particular interest like that?
Oh God, since my channel, not really. It's been so time consuming, but I have done game dev, indie game dev in the past.
Okay, cool.
I made a few games. One of the games is actually on Moby Games. It's credited in there and everything like that. But I would like to get back into that, but I don't want to, like, between a full-time job and now my YouTube thing that's kind of taking off a little bit. I don't want to spread myself even more thin than I already am. But I have done game dev. I would like to get back into that again. I've got tons of ideas I want to tackle. Like, that's kind of always been my dream, was actually to become a game dev. But I mean, I started in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and weirdly enough, I could make the same type of games now and probably get more attention. Like, there's been like a retro resurgence. Like,
oh yeah,
toward the end of the 90s and the early 2000s is like, retro games suck, 3D games are awesome, blah blah. But now you can release a game that looks straight out of the NES and sell 2 million copies, literally, with like a Shovel Knight. So it's a pretty wild time. But I did a lot of unfinished projects. I finished a few games under different aliases and stuff like that. But I'd like to do that again for sure. RPGs, or actually there's this detective game I really want to make, kind of like a non-combat focused Blade Runner detective game.
Okay.
That's been kind of my dream, actually, to do that for a while, but it's definitely an ambitious thing, especially when you try to experiment with mechanics that haven't really been done all that much. If you want to make a twin stick shooter, I know how to do that. I can make a twin stick shooter in like 2 days, but trying to come up with a brand new mechanic and make sure it's fun is a little bit tricky. But otherwise, I do music. I haven't done it for a bit, but I did music production. I'm not that great on the keys, but I do sometimes like record some riffs, throw it into some software, synth, drum kits, things like that. Some of the stuff was not bad. I was doing some of it for my game dev, actually, which is pretty cool. But little hobbies here and there. But yeah, I would like to get back to them, but I've kind of taken a back seat because there's only so many things I can do throughout the day. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. You got to find that balance, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's life. And I've noticed you did a video about Final Fantasy, looking back on Final Fantasy VII. With that video, you had a collaboration with Downward Thrust, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you're looking to do again in the future, say with other content creators? And how was that experience for you, working with another content creator on the same topic?
It was I think I got a very unique experience out of that one. I'm open to it in the future. It's amazing how much extra work a collaboration can be, because it's no longer like if you're the main decision point, it's amazing how much quicker that is than having to come to an agreement with somebody else. And there's this kind of hey, can you do this? I haven't got to this. Can you do this? There's kind of back and forth. You play a little bit of ball and stuff like that. He actually came to me, surprisingly, and he's now got almost 300,000 subscribers now. But he was smaller than me when he came to me. Actually, he had I think two 2 or 3,000 subscribers, and I was at around 6 or 7 at the time, I think. And he came to me for a collaboration idea. I think he'd done like at least 1 or 2 before then, and we bounced around some ideas. We were thinking about doing Mass Effect, but we ended up settling on Final Fantasy VII because it was a hot property, and it was a great idea too because he was more of a present time new game review / speculation channel, and I was more of a retrospective channel. So we came up with a brilliant idea that I would head up a retrospective of Final Fantasy VII and its predecessors, and he would do a speculative video, and we'd help each other with the scripts and stuff like that. Really cool idea. I'm happy with the work I did on that. It kind of got tossed aside a little bit when his channel started to blow up. His channel blew up right around that time. He went from like I said, 2 or 3,000 to 70,000 within like a month. So
wow! Okay.
His channel blew up like really fast, and so he's getting all this other attention. So I think he was a bit distracted, and he realized he didn't really need that. So, long story short, he had a ghostwriter write some of it, and some of it was plagiarized. So I didn't know about that until like 4 or 5 months after, and the guy, which I won't say his name, but he actually came to me because it was under my channel and said, "Hey, this is plagiarized." I'm like, "How could this be plagiarized?" Because I wrote all my stuff. Yeah. I wrote probably 70% of mine, and then I looked in the exact chapters that I did not write. A lot of it was word for word with minor changes that I made.
Right.
So it was not good.
Oh dear.
The guy was actually really, really cool about it. I double checked to make sure he was actually telling the truth, and then I'm like, wow, this is really disturbing. I immediately credited him. I put something at the end of the video in the description. They had just taken down annotations, so I couldn't put an annotation in the video, but I gave him as much credit as I could, and I'm like, this is not okay. I had no idea, and I reached out to Downward Thrust, and he said that his writer plagiarized the book, and then he wouldn't work with him again. It was an unpaid writer. I don't know the exact truth of it, but that's what he claimed. Okay. But yeah, it didn't really sit well with me, so I can't really watch that video without thinking about that. And so I haven't done another collaboration since, but not necessarily because partially due to that, just because it was a long experience, and it ended up resulting in a video that wasn't 100% original. But I would be down for it again, and obviously I'd be a bit more diligent about doing plagiarism checks and things like that, because everything else I do, I 100% original. I don't even copy and paste from Wikipedia. I write everything from scratch. It's all very, very much original content. So the idea that one of my videos has something that was plucked from it was a guy who did a really, really brilliant book about Final Fantasy VII, like really in-depth character studies and mechanics and stuff like that. Really, really cool guy. I mean, we talk all the time on Twitter now, so I think we're cool. But it's just, it wasn't fun to learn that your collaboration wasn't original. So that's partially why I haven't done another one. But if the opportunity happens, I'd be up for it, I guess. Yeah.
If you were to, is there anybody who springs to mind that you think they'd be cool to work with, or someone who you think you would get on with in regards to making a project?
As I've done this for a couple of years now, I've made kind of acquaintances and friends with a few people. Now that I've done it once, I kind of know how much effort would kind of go into it, especially the logistics of sending videos and scripts and voiceovers back and forth. But as far as style, like there's people I get along with and stuff like that, but as far as style of who I'd actually probably collaborate with, people I'd like to collaborate with, like I think Ahoy and his work is amazing. There's also some really good there's one guy, Stray Fox, I think he does like 3D rendered Super Nintendos with games going into them, and like he actually renders out entire like scenes from video games in 3D. Like it's he puts so much post-production into his work. It's amazing. Like I wouldn't mind working with him, but I mean he's already does his own thing great. if I were to pick one name I'd probably say Rethink. I think he's
oh yeah, he's great. Yeah,
really good,
yeah.
and I think our styles are similar enough that we could probably do something together. Ahoy is very illustrative. He
Mhm.
does a lot of like really high quality illustrations, so I don't know if I'd really mesh with that style, just from a stylistic standpoint. But Rethink, I think we could probably do something. I don't know if it, usually you want one editor. You don't really want to edit multiple things, but yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. If we wanted to do a two-parter or whatever, I think we could probably make something fairly cohesive that way. We have some special effects here and there, a little bit of After Effects, a little bit of title treatment, whatever. But I think we're probably the closest style-wise.
Mm.
Probably, yeah, I'd probably say him. Yeah,
Yeah, I've had a chat with Racevic. He's a really nice guy.
yeah, super nice.
Yeah,
He's a really cool guy.
yeah, he's awesome. So I've only got a couple more questions left for you here. One thing I'm quite interested in is, so you're doing your streams every Wednesday. You're making these longer analysis videos every few weeks or so. Where do you see your channel going in the future? Do you have a vision in your head, or things you'd like to change, or things you'd like to try moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of go with where it goes. I mean, I could tell you like 5 things I could do immediately that would result in my channel getting bigger, but I've kind of had a thing ever since I think my Diablo video. I realized that I did not want to be a Diablo channel,
Hmm.
firstly. And then I did a Daggerfall video, and I'm like, people are like, oh, cover Morrowind, cover, Oblivion, cover Skyrim, I want to hear all your thoughts. I'm like, I don't want to become an Elder Scrolls channel. And then I
Yeah.
did a video on, I think, what was my next video after that? I don't remember, but whatever. I think my next really big video was probably Hellgate or something
Hmm.
like that. And I'm like, I don't want to become a Hellgate channel. So every time I hit a really successful like vein, I'm like, I don't want to become that channel. And there's
Yeah.
literally a guy like there. I know one guy I was recommended. He actually was the inspiration for me doing a Diablo comparison video because I didn't like
Hmm.
his comparison. I think it was way too one-sided. I tried to make a more reasoned approach. It still is biased, but
Yeah.
I mean it was more reasoned. He does brand new Diablo content like daily, and like
Daily.
you could make a Hellgate channel. You could make a Diablo 2 channel. Yeah, you could do. There's a guy who dedicates this entire channel toward Populous the Beginning, which is like 1998 game, which it's a small
Oh God.
community,
Yeah.
but like there's you could literally focus on anything. But I didn't want to ever be, oh, that's the Diablo guy, or
Hmm.
that's the Elder Scrolls guy. I know some people like that, and I talk with one of them. He's really,
Yeah.
really, really knowledgeable, but even he branches out a little bit. But so I know if I really hit hard on, like, for example, Fallout is probably my most like marketable, thing because there's YouTube kind of measures your past, work, and like they have something like an expert level or something like that. Anyway, like if you do a lot in one set of keywords or whatever, you can kind of you gain a leg up whenever you do more content in that realm, I guess. So, I've done a couple Fallout videos, I've done a couple Diablo videos, but I've obviously, you know, spread myself out into various different things. I cover obscure games, and I know it's not necessarily the best thing for my channel's growth. Like some of my videos get like 4,000 views or whatever rather than 100,000, but
Hmm.
I really, really wanted to do a video on this old game, like Magic and Mayhem. Didn't do very well, but I was happy with what I did, and I covered this obscure game that I grew up. I really, really liked it a long time. I don't hear about it much. I maybe found like one review on YouTube about it, and I posted that, and then like within a day, Julian Gollop, the original creator, said, "Hey, somebody remembers this game." I'm like, "That's awesome!" Like I actually got, Senpai noticed me. I got the creator to to you know, and shining so I've kind of bounced between, hey, this is a cool franchise or mainstream thing that I like that would probably get me some attention and help me grow my audience. Not
Yep.
just because I'm cash money, but just because it's a lot cooler to reach more people. You
Yeah.
can actually spread your message further. But then I also, to probably the detriment of my channel, also cover really, really fucking obscure games. Like nobody was ever like, hey, Indigo, can you cover Dark Earth? And I'm like, oh sure. No, it's completely out of my out of a hat, that game. But I really wanted to cover it. It's been on my list for a while. It was supposed to be a quick video, it was not. But so I've kind of been bouncing between obscure games, more mainstream ones and stuff like that, without violating my integrity. I think that's important, because if I ever get to a point where I'm like, oh, I've got to do another Fallout video, or I got to do another Skyrim video because that's the thing that'll get my views, I think I'll just kind of hate myself and I'll probably quit. So I'd rather cover things that may not be as immediately beneficial to my growth of my channel, but I have a personal investment or interest in. So
okay, gotcha. And I've got one more question for you here, Indigo, before I'll let you scamper away. Are you looking forward to Fallout 76?
We'll see how it goes. It's an interesting thing. I actually talked about this a bit on this podcast I did last week, but I have a long history with Fallout. I actually played the Fallout demo before the original game was out, and then I did Fallout 2, and that came with Fallout 1 bundled on the disc. I played all of the mainline ones. I played some of the spin-offs, and afterward came back and played all the spin-offs. But so I have a really long history with the series, and I don't hate the new games. I think they're good. I just don't think that they capture the spirit of the originals as well as they could. And due to a lot of different, even like censorship reasons, the newer games suffer from it. You know, like it used to be that every NPC you could kill, now you can't. You know, they don't really want to have child killing in their games. I can understand that, but like it also makes like it puts immortals in your game, you know, for whatever reason, and that can kind of frustrate the player, because it used to be like, oh, you know, any living creature in this world I can decimate if I choose to. That gives you sort of sense of freedom, and it's sort of immersion that you don't really get if you say, oh, well, I can't do anything to that or that person because the game says I can't, you know. But with Fallout 76, I think it's a very risky game, and it's a new developer. It's being overseen, if I understand correctly, it's being overseen by Bethesda Game Studios, but it's actually being done by I think Bethesda Game Studios Austin, I believe. Who was working on a multiplayer only game called Battlecry until that game was canceled and they were repurposed for Fallout 76. I think that it changes so much about the game that it's almost not even the same game anymore, but I'm not saying that it won't be a fun game. Like adding multiplayer to anything practically just generates fun. Like, you know, you asked me, is teaming up with like 4 other people and shooting a bunch of giant mutant bats with like, you know, laser miniguns. Does that sound fun? Sure. It sounds really fun. I think that they're highly underestimating, I should say, how massive a change that they've made to the game is. Like taking out NPCs as we know it and replacing with players. All of a sudden it'll play more like an MMO, like a light MMO, kind of like Destiny, I guess. More so than an RPG. Like you can't really role play when people are dancing in front of you and saying that how many times they banged your mom last night. You know, like it's not really going to be very immersive. But as an action RPG, I guess I'm sure it'll be fun. Early gameplay and like Digital Foundry stuff has shown some technical issues, but I think it'll be fun. It's definitely a spin-off. It's not Fallout 5, but I think some people will not find what they wanted in that game. I stand by that. It'll be 100% true. Like whenever you hear people's stories about Fallout, like they're talking about, you know, oh, remember that scene where I was talking to, you know, Kaisar in, you know, the New Vegas. That was an amazing scene. You know, how about talking to Mr. House, or you know, discovering the secrets behind the synths, or you know, finding the Gek, you know, in Fallout 3 or whatever. Like all those sequences are not like they won't be possible in Fallout 76 because they took NPC story characters out of it. So it'll be a much more action combat multiplayer focused experience, which some people have probably been, you know, it's like, oh, perfect, Fallout without all the boring stuff, and I get to shoot more, you know, shoot giant sloths with, mini nukes, that sounds amazing, but I think people who are looking for more of a role-playing experience will probably be disappointed. And as much as I like playing games like Destiny or Warframe, I also like playing games like, Fallout 2 or Fallout New Vegas. Mm-hmm. So I can see the appeal on both sides, but I personally am not looking forward to it as much as most people would be, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned you did a podcast. Can you give us more details on this podcast? Because this is new to me. I didn't know you did a podcast.
Yeah, I think it just went up live on his on Nerdslayer's channel like a day or two ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he actually brought me on to talk about Fallout and Elder Scrolls because surprisingly with E3 a few months ago, Bethesda dropped the double bomb where they announced a new Fallout and a new Elder Scrolls. And although the Elder Scrolls game is probably at least 4 years away because it's still in pre-production, there's tons of speculation, speculation videos, and there was a copyright leaked and people automatically know where it's going to be set and what's going to happen. And I'm like, come on, guys. But I started speculation and stuff like that. So if you'd like to see two guys, I don't normally do speculation videos. I think that I'm best suited for fairly fact-based, well-researched, sourced retrospective videos. I think that's where my strong suit is. But it's fun. It's fun to speculate occasionally. So we do some of that, and I do talk about Fallout and my thoughts on Fallout and stuff like that. And that. So if you want to check that out, it's check out Nerdslayer's channel. It should be one of the top videos there.
Okay, so that's just a one-off thing. It's not a regular podcast that you do.
Oh no, I did have a other podcast with a really cool guy, another Englishman like yourself. I'm assuming you're English, unless it's Welsh. I can't tell.
Oh no, it's English. Well, that's a new one.
No, Welsh is definitely different, but
yeah.
I forget what part of England he is. He's got a bit of a. He's got the English where he uses the N's kind of like Americans do. Like I was just thinking, like that. I don't know what part of England that's from, but. He has that English.
Maybe up north somewhere.
Yeah, I think it might be more north.
Welsh, and it's probably like Manchester or something.
Somewhere around there. I think he was moving to Manchester. I think he was somewhere around there. But really cool guy, L. Hudson. We've done a couple. I've looked at some of his scripts, help him with stuff. We did a podcast. It was called. I came up with the name of it. I've already forgot. My brain just like wipes every time. Kindle the Bonfire. It's a Dark Souls reference, but Kindle the Bonfire podcast. We did one episode. We actually recorded like hours of chatting about E3, but it was by the time it got toward the end, it was too late, so we never actually posted that. But we were probably do another episode at some point. So that is kind of our podcast, but it's not regular at all. But at some point we'll probably continue that. He's kind of running that show, so he has to kind of organize it. But I was thinking about doing my own podcast, but I'm just too many directions at once right now. I'm trying to focus on what I can actually do well. So
yeah. Well, I think that's it for us. Thank you very much for your time today, Indigo Gaming. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope you had a good time as well.
I did.
And to finish off, can you let our lovely listeners know where they can find you and how they can support you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you just search Indigo Gaming, I should be the top result. There's some mobile company that made a channel after me, but I'm bigger, so that should still be number one. It's a little bit confusing, but I have two channels. I have Indigo Gaming and I have Indigo Gaming Live. I link them to each other. If I just moved my live streams over to Indigo Gaming Live, so they're a little bit quieter when I live stream now. I used to get more numbers than I do now, but I think it'll be easier so people can subscribe to exactly what they want. They can subscribe to either my scripted stuff or my live streams or both. But yeah, I don't have any semblance of an upload schedule. It's probably
okay.
YouTube reps tell me that's a bad thing, but I just my videos just vary. They can be 10 minutes, they can be 80. So it's up to that. But yeah, I try to post whenever I can, and at my live stream channel, I'll be live streaming every Wednesday. So.
And they can find you on Patreon as well?
Yeah. I think that one actually managed to get my normal name. It should be Patreon/Indigo Gaming or a linked off my channel. But yeah, I try to do vlogs for my patrons and updates. That's the one place I post about my upcoming videos. So if you want to get a sneak peek on that, that's where you can find me. But yeah, I appreciate any support if people are interested. So thank you.
We'll put all the links in the description at the end of this video. But again, thank you very much, and all the best, mate.
Thank you so much. Talk to you later.